I don't see any attendees right now. So
Oh,
maybe
no.
oh, there's one. You got one. Okay, so good evening and welcome to the Firefly and Mantis World Tour webinar. My name is Cindy Caverly, Chair of the Maine chapter of the AMC, and I will be your host tonight. Carol Leonard will be the presenter, and we thank her very much for volunteering her time for our membership. Carol's presentation will be approximately 1 hour, and she would like to take questions at the end. So, if you have questions as we go along, you can click on the Q&A at the bottom of your screen and enter your question, or at the end of the webinar, you can also use the raise your hand feature. If you have any questions or comments not directly related to the presentation, you can use the chat bar. I will be monitoring it. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on the AMC Maine YouTube channel, along with all our other webinars and online workshops. I will put the link in the chat bar, and you can also find it on our Facebook page. Carol Leonard is a graduate of the 2019-20 class of the Maine Master Naturalist Program in Ellsworth. As a requirement of the course, she chose to spend a full year observing all that went on in one particular delimited site. She sat on a rock in the middle of a beaver flowage once a week for a year. Tonight's presentation is the result of those observations and the book she is working on. In addition to being a master naturalist, Carol is a midwife and the author of a best-selling memoir, Lady's Hands, Lion's Heart, A Midwife's Saga. So, welcome Carol, and let's get on with the show.
Thank you. Yes, I live in Ellsworth, Maine, and I'm a retired midwife and also a graduate of the Maine Master Naturalist Program this past year. That was in Ellsworth, and part of that program is that you have to commit to sitting. They call it a delimited site. I actually renamed it my mandala, but you sit there and you observe. The requirement for the course was you only have to sit for 9 hours, but I ended up sitting on my rock for a whole year. So I sat through all 4 seasons, and I was honored to be able to have the time to do that, and also it was a pretty interesting experiment with just being patient and sitting through 4 seasons on a rock. So I kept a nature journal, and I came home after I sat there, and I researched and I did drawings, and I explored what I had observed while I was there. And this is my journal, and there are slides that go along with this, and I'm going to try to share the slides with you all. I hope I can make it happen. Let's see. I don't know. It says it's loading. Okay. Oh, it's way. Okay, hold on. Oh, shoot. Oh my God. Somehow this all, let me bring it all the way back. Can you hear me, Cindy?
Yes.
Uh-oh. Okay. All right, great. So this is the rock that I sat on, and I started.
Carol,
it's a glacial erratic that's in the middle of a beaver flowage. Carol? Yes.
No, I was
can
just
you
going to say.
See this?
We can now see a picture with the rock and some yeah.
Okay. One of the things that I know from doing this before is that my slide, I can see it before you can. So there's a little bit of a lag. I'm not sure why, but that's been sort of, I can see it a few seconds before you guys can. So If I jump to the next slide, it's just because that's what I'm looking at, and you'll be able to see it in a few seconds. So this is the rock. This is a glacial erratic in our beaver flowage. This is the rock that I sat on for a year. And this is, I call it the food web at my mandala. This is just the ecosystem that happened in the community of the habitats of my rock. I'm gonna go, some of these slides I'm gonna go through quickly because there's 100 slides, and I'll just focus on some that I find more interesting than others. Although I must say, every time I went out there, there was some new amazing thing that happened that just was astounding to me, even in the middle of the winter. So this is the first time I was there. It was April 1st, a year ago. I drew a map of my mandalas, and there was still ice around the edges of the beaver flowage. And if you look at the bottom, you can see I drew a picture of my boots. So the first thing that I saw when I was sitting there on this frozen rock was these adorable little growths. They look like little golf tees, and I mistakenly called them a fungus, but they're not. I made a correction later on. But anyway, they were adorable little golf tees, and I had never seen them before, mainly because I had never really sat on a rock in the middle of in the spring. But if you look now at rocks closely, you will see these tiny, tiny little golf tees, and it actually is a lichen. And also on that day, on April 1st, there was a mated pair of mallard ducks. And so because of that, I got to talk about the mallard duck penises. And so a duck's penis is amazing. It's a corkscrew penis, and it's 12 centimeters long. And if you Google it, you can see this penis come flying out, this spiraling corkscrew penis. And the mallard female vagina is also corkscrew, which it works out quite well. And then I drew a picture of the red-winged blackbird because that's one of my favorite sounds in the swamp in the spring. So the third time I went up to my rock, I was sort of distressed to see that the rock was covered with feathers. And after poking around with the feathers, I found that there was one iridescent blue feather, and I realized it was the male mallard had been killed on top of my rock. This is sort of an ongoing theme, unfortunately, throughout this journal. So I was trying to figure out about the first night, about the when the salamanders are moving, but our pond was frozen in, and this is still in the middle of April, end of April, and it was still frozen solid. But the very first things that were growing, the tiny little green that were poking up in the field, were the beginnings of blue flag irises. Now this I found at my fourth sitting, and this is actually otter scat. It's I found it was a very turquoise color, really a beautiful color, but I found pieces of crayfish antennae and large chunks of carapace and some fish scales. And I was really excited to realize that we had river otters. I didn't know that they were there, but they definitely left their calling card. And so this is last spring, and this is I call this a male Tom Liberace because he just thought he was so beautiful. He would be strutting around, and he would be flashing his fanning and completely absorbed with himself, and the hens just sort of looked at him like, yeah, whatever. But he was a very beautiful, big old Tom, and he was around for quite a while in the field. So these are some macroinvertebrates that were in the water. But this bird that I'm talking about right now is called an American bittern. This bird is amazing. I don't know if you've ever heard the call of this bird, but if you can Google it afterwards, it's called the American bittern, and it sounds like a sump pump. It's the weirdest sound, but this bird, when he thinks that he's looking at you, when he saw me looking at him, he stuck his beak straight up in the air and he started swaying like a reed, and that's how they camouflage themselves. It really works really well, because when they do that, when they start swaying the reeds, you really can't see them. But Google American bittern just so you can hear the call, because it's a very sound. I know this is blurry, but this is a moose cow that walked right through right across the stream, and it's blurry because I was running to get my camera, but there she is. And then the Canada geese were coming back, and this is May 6th, so almost like a little more than a year ago. The Canadian geese were coming back to the flowage. Wild watercress. I'm going to go through some of these quickly. Oh yeah, the black flies. Well, those are out now, and the little wild strawberries are out now too. So this is serviceberry, which is starting to flower right now in Ellsworth, and it's one of the first white flowers that you see. It's very showy and very obvious in the spring, and it's called Well, it's also called shadbush because it's named after when the shad started running in the rivers, but it's serviceberries because the ministers knew when they saw this flowering that the ground was thawed out enough to bury the dead from the winter, and so hence the name serviceberry. Frogs, snakes, regular denizens of a swamp. Osprey. Oops, sorry. So we had a kind of a discussion about the rabbits here. We have a lot of rabbits that we were trying to identify whether they were cottontails or snowshoe hares. Basically, it was assumed that they were snowshoe hares because they don't think that cottontails are really north of Portland. But one of our questions about our rabbits was that these rabbits don't turn white in the winter. And so I contacted the Maine Fish and Game wardens, and they had a lot of questions about that. And they asked me if I would be able to get a photo of one of our rabbits just so they could kind of try to ID it. And I said that I would try. Mustard, dandelion, these are just flowers these are flowers that were in the field on the way to my mandala this time in the spring. Okay, so what happened was, unfortunately, instead of getting a photo of the rabbit, my dog killed a baby rabbit. And so I called, and the Fish and Game warden came down, who's very nice. And when he looked at the rabbit, he said, "Oh, well, we're surprised because how long the hind feet were. They really weren't sure what this rabbit was, basically." So they brought the rabbit back to Bangor, and they had, I don't know, several meetings about it. And there was nobody could really do a positive identification for this rabbit. So they sent the DNA to a lab to do DNA sequencing, and it came back that it was a cottontail. It was a snowshoe hare. But they think that one of the reasons that it's not turning white in the winter is due to climate change. So the blue flag irises are in the field right now. Very beautiful. One of my favorite butterflies, the eastern tiger swallowtail. Okay, so this is about fireflies. This is one of the reasons I named my presentation the Firefly and Mantis World Tours, because the insect world seems to be pretty involved with cannibal sex, and I found that fascinating. So I did not know this about fireflies. So when you see a firefly blinking in the field, that's the male firefly signaling for a female. The females are flightless, so they're down in the grass and they're just waiting to see the blink pattern that's specific to their species. So they wait, and then when they see the blink pattern, like Morse code that's their species, then they blink back, and then the male will fly down and mate with her, and then leave. And then so the female who's now been fertilized, she sits in the grass and she waits until she sees a male blinking that's not her species specific blink, but a different species, and she imitates that blink pattern. She mimics it. She lures that male down to mate with her, and then she eats him. And part of the eating him is that the bioluminescent chemical, actually, I guess, it helps to, it's a nutrient for her fertilized eggs. But I just thought that this was amazing because, you know, when you look and see fireflies blinking in the field and it looks so pastoral and so wonderful, well, you just know that that guy's hours are numbered. It's like fatal attraction. So it's a jungle out there. So this snapping turtle, I have nicknamed Tina because the scientific name for the snapping turtle is Chelydra serpentina. She's a regular. She comes up every June to lay her eggs in our septic system in our leach field. And then so turkey vultures. I did not realize that turkey vultures, this is amazing. So a turkey vulture that I found out can glide for over 6 hours at a time with one single flap of its wings. That's amazing to me. And also that they have this amazing sense of smell for methane, which is part of the, you know, the decomposing carrion that they are attracted to. So they can smell methane. I guess propane guys say if they see some vultures, turkey vultures on the ground, that they know that there's a gas leak somewhere. And then this yellow water lily, which is called splatterdock, it was in my my mandala, and it is also an indicator species for the habitat that my mandala is. I'll talk about this a little later, but there are 3 plant species that are indicator species for my habitat, and the splatterdock or yellow water lily is one of them. Robins, baby robins, or robins everywhere. Yarrow, pickerel frog. So I did flush a little white-tailed deer fawn out of the field when I was walking to my mandala. And then I came back and researched. I found it, I knew the mother was probably close by, and I came back and found that the mother returns 8 to 10 times to the baby in a 24-hour period to nurse her young. So she wasn't far behind. I mean, far away. All of a sudden, there were dragonflies everywhere. So this is starting to get into the issue of Asclepius, which milkweed, common milkweed, and the monarch butterflies this year. So the monarch butterflies last summer were incredible. I do think that this is part of the reason is because of the push for citizen scientists to ask their towns to not mow the milkweed down in all the fields. So the monarch butterflies last summer have made a tremendous resurgence. I just saw pictures even locally of monarchs. It was so great. I mean, it was just great. There were monarch butterfly caterpillars everywhere, and the adults everywhere. So I do think that it is working. Oh, the hermit thrush, which is my favorite, all-time favorite sound in the woods, but it also means it's going to rain. So we had to actually catch insects for, we called it the relaxation chamber, which is just actually a way we were collecting insects. And so my very first insect that I caught for my collection was a dragonfly. It actually was a howling pennant skimmer. But on the belly of this dragonfly were these beautiful red beads, and they were gorgeous. They looked like cranberries. They were very beautiful and shiny. And so I came in and I researched what these beads were, and I found out that my dragonfly was actually covered with mites. It was a type of water mite larvae. Valerian for sedatives. So this is a photo that I got in my field on a milkweed leaf. So this goldenrod crab spider was hiding underneath the milkweed leaf, and I got the photo just as it leapt out. A bumblebee came to land in the milkweed flower, and the crab spider jumped out and killed the bumblebee. And I happened to get the photo. It was quite shocking, actually. I didn't realize that was going to happen. And then we had a great blue heron that was in the in my mandala all summer, fishing. Elegant, beautiful bird. So this is a horned bladderwort, Utricularia cornuta, and this is a carnivorous plant, and I have actually been looking for this plant for 50 years, and I've never seen it, although I knew it's here. But so if you look, the little under the water, underneath each of the little tiny leaves, there's a bladder that actually is, as the plant sort of strains the stream as it's going through these bladders, when it bumps up against a microinvertebrate, the bladder has a vacuum, a really sophisticated vacuum system, and it vacuums up the little hapless victim, and it digests it, and then it flushes it out. I've been looking for this plant literally for 50 years. So I put a photo of my mandala on Facebook, and a friend of mine who's a very fabulous botanist, she said, "Oh, you'll have that, you'll have the bladderwort back there in your swamp." And I said, no. I've been looking for this plant for, no, it's not it. But you know what? Yes, the next time I went out, there it was, sticking right up out of the water, beautiful little yellow, fragile, hungry horned bladderwort. I was so excited to see it. So this is another indicator species for my habitat, for the ecology of my mandala. So this is the second one. There was the splatterdock, and now this horned bladderwort. And I will get back to that in just a minute. Barn swallows, the dragonfly, nymphs. Okay, so down below is the monarch butterfly caterpillars, instars, and they were happily munching on our milkweed in the field, and we had a lot of them. Oh, I'll return to that in a sec. So I didn't realize that cattails, the bottom part of the cattail, the one that looks like the sort of the velvet cigar, is the female part of the flower, and then that fuzzy part above the cigar is the male part of the flower. Just interesting. So every time I went out there, I would see something and observe it, but when I came back in and did the research, I would find out something that I just did not know before, and that part was pretty humbling. It was pretty fun. Okay, this at the bottom is the pickerel weed, that huge flower, huge plant. That photo is that's the dominant species in my habitat. So pickerel weed is called a pickerel weed marsh because that's the dominant species, and I'll get back to that in one sec. Oh, we had a kingfisher And my husband was about a mile away. We have a gravel pit, and there was a hole, a burrow, and he put in his building inspector. Feet in, he saw 2 big eyes and a beak. And so the kingfishers are burrow. They live in burrows, and their burrows are 3 feet in, and that's where their nest is. So that was pretty cool to find them. Queen Anne's lace, which the Native Americans used for birth control. The goldfinches are back. I saw some this morning. They're definitely back. They're so cheery. So these orb weaver spiders, I'm sure you've seen this, the white zigzag in their web, particularly in your gardens. So I looked up why that zigzag web, and it's called a stabilamenta, which is a reinforced area. It's actually triple strips of silk, and they think that the reason there is that visible zigzag is to keep birds from flying into their webs. And here's the second part of the world tour, the European mantis. And you probably know part of this story is that the praying mantis, when they mate, and they say when the male inserts his, quote, copulatory organ, which is a dainty way of saying it. So the female turns that long, elegant neck, and then while they're copulating, and then bites off his head. But what I did not know is that after that the male keeps thrusting for 2 hours headless. And that just is amazing to me. That's like such a guy thing. So excuse me, these are other insects that were part of my collection. I dried them, and I was mounting them, and then the middle one, the virgin tiger moth, I found, and it was already dead, so I put it in a paper cup, and then I was bringing it home. And then I found this beetle who's alive, and put it in the paper cup, and then I got home, and the virgin tiger moth was pretty much gone. And then I found out that the beetle was the American carrion beetle, Necrophilia americana, and that's their job. They eat dead stuff, and so he was just doing his job. Okay, this guy is bad. So this is the milkweed tussock moth and larvae, and I saw underneath the some of the milkweed leaves like this black velvety gazillion of these little tiny larvae. And I had the feeling that I should move it because it just looked bad, but then I thought, no, we're all about biodiversity, so I left them there, which was really unfortunate because within 1 day, all the milkweed was completely eradicated. It was just like the skeleton of the plant, and all the monarch caterpillars were gone. They drove them out. So I'm just telling you, if you ever see underneath a milkweed leaf all these little tiny fuzzy black velvety guys, to take that leaf and put it far away, because it's gonna devastate the milkweed food for where the monarchs are feeding. And this is brush-footed butterfly, the great spangled fritillary, which I thought was very beautiful. Whoops. Okay. So this is my habitat. There's a book called The Natural Landscapes of Maine, a guide to natural communities and ecosystems. This is from the Maine Department of Conservation. And so they had like 125 ecosystems that they identified in Maine, and mine is a pickleweed marsh. It's that's one of the requirements is that there are these 3 dominating, these are lily or spatterdock, and that's what we have, and the pickleweed is dominant. So I was pretty happy to find that I actually is a real habitat, a real community. And then this is the little leopard frog, which is adorable, and it's probably the most common frog in North America. So one thing I wrote about with quaking aspen that I found out that I didn't know. So with quaking aspen, the petiole or the stem is flattened. So when the aspen is quaking, shimmering, it's actually because the breeze is picking up on that flattened stem. And they think that part of the reason that happens is to get rid of herbivores, predators for the leaves. And dog day cicada, they are called dog day cicada because they're usually, you hear that electric sounding sound in the hottest days, dog days of August. So the cicada nymphs burrow, they can live underground for 13 to 17 years, and eventually they come up and they mate after 13 to 17 years, and then they die. So it's getting to be the late summer. You can tell by this photo of my mandala, my stream, the far shores, that's all pickerel weed there. And then the front, this more in the foreground is bulrushes, which is actually a new plant for this wetlands. Ravens. Oh, so here's the correction about those little golf tees at the bottom of the page. So I wrote that this is actually a lichen. It was not a fungi, and it's a Cladonia acehari, and it's pretty common now that I'm actually looking at lichens closely, especially with a little magnifier. They're adorable. Big mast year for acorns this fall. Lots of acorns this fall. And this is a viburnum. It's a wild raisin, which I didn't know about. I noticed the flowers and lots of the fruit, wild raisin, and you can actually eat it. It's edible, although there's a big droop. There's a pit in the middle, so there's not a lot of fleshy nutrient there, but I guess if you were really starving in the woods, you could eat these. But it is a good winter food for birds and animals. Oh yeah, this is the red squirrel who's always yelling at me. Then I said they're often pissy. So I found out that the people here, some of the people here were feeding the red squirrels. And I said, please don't feed the red squirrels. Red squirrels are cheeky, brave, steal your underwear. So this is Tina, the snapping turtle. So one thing that happened with the snapping turtle that was pretty funny, I saw her in June, I guess the end of June, coming up, and I thought she was coming up to our leach field to lay her eggs. And I was watching her sort of lumbering up, and we had 3 chefs from Boston renting a little cabin here, and she kept going. She went past the leach field and she kept going, and she went under their car to lay her eggs. And so I had a big stick, and I was poking her. She snapped onto the stick, so that was great, because then I could drag her into the field. And the 3 chefs are standing there like this. They couldn't believe it. They were from Boston. They thought this was like Wild Kingdom. Like this is the best thing that they'd ever seen in their lives. And so that little guy up above is one of her babies, one of her hatchlings that we actually found at the end of the summer. It's pretty cool. Coyotes are back. So this is the end of September. Wood duck. Yeah, and I almost walked into a white hornet nest in the field, which would have been my demise. I saw it in time, thank God. And then down below is, I just noticed this weed in the pond that I had never seen before, and I went back and looked it up, and it's American pondweed. How about that? Oh, this giant water bug. It's also called a toe biter. Pretty frightening looking guy. By this point we had mowed the field, and so this is a red-tailed hawk who was around for a few days, and I think he was just waiting because of the mice that were in the field from mowing the field. Furries, and so this is a little, the woolly bear caterpillars. I just found, I think this is interesting, that Yankee lore has it, the longer the black bands at either end of the caterpillar, the longer, colder, snowier the coming winter. Conversely, the longer the middle brown band, the milder the winter will be. It was fun just to go out, and because every time I saw something and then came back and researched it, I just learned something new that I just didn't know, and it was pretty fun. It was really a fun thing to do. So this is now Indian summer. This is the foliage around my rock. Very beautiful foliage last fall, incredible. And these are, it's called the orange brain jelly. It's a fungus that I guess they use in Asian soups. It's edible. I don't know. I would think I would have to be hard pressed to try it. Looks like it'd be like chewing a rubber band. And then I did startle a doe, and she ran from the field, and I found out that when their tail is sticking, their little white tail sticking up like that, that's an alarm position. Lots of winter berries. Now it's getting fall. Oh, these flickers, they were migrating and they were leaving, but they just came back a couple of weeks ago. There was a whole flock of them here, and I saw one of these flickers dive bombing one of my chickens. It was pretty funny. Oh, and I was messing with a crow. It was fun. Winter berries. Virginia creeper. Daddy longlegs. Oh, so this is a ruffed grouse. So I didn't realize with ruffed grouse, and I'm hearing they're drumming now. They're back in the spring, but when they drum, they actually stand on top of a log and they drum the log, and you can hear it. I think, what did it say? You can hear it for a quarter of a mile. So, late summer, things are starting to really turn brown. So this is one of the last, I call it red on red. So those little lichens that have the red caps, I know you've seen them. They're called British soldiers, named after the redcoats. That's Cladonia cristella. That's a pretty common lichen. But this dragonfly, this red dragonfly, is called the autumn meadowhawk, and it's actually the last dragonfly of the season. So now this is the middle of November, and things are really closing down, and the Canadian geese are migrating away. They're leaving, and it just reminded me as I sat on my rock, all that stays is dying and all that lives is getting out. See the geese in chevron flight flapping and racing on before the snow. They've got the urge for going, and they've got the wings so they can go. They get the urge for going when the meadow grass is turning brown, summertime is falling down, and winter's closing in. Made famous by Joni Mitchell. So this last fall was really, like I said, an incredible mast year. And the one thing that I had never seen before was the poison ivy fruit. This poison ivy fruit was just dripping with the poison ivy. And apparently it's another really good winter food source for birds and animals. Humans are the only people who can't tolerate it. We get a dermatitis, from the compound urushiol, but it is a really good winter source of nutrition for all the other animals and birds. So this is November 18th, middle of November, and this was really distressing to me. I went out and the great blue heron was dead. And I'm not sure what happened exactly. I called the Maine game warden again, and he came down and got it. And you know, the only thing, and this was also with the mallard back in the spring, the only thing we can think of is that the bald eagles here are, because we have overfished or fished out the Gulf of Maine, that they are attacking other birds to eat. Well, I don't know. They didn't know. But they took the bird. They took the heron to research and see if they could find out. I measured the legs, and then I was researching. So the heron's neck has a bone in the middle of the neck, as you can see, that goes across. That just gives them more flexibility for when they're fishing. But it was just really distressing for me because for years and years, the heron flying in front of the moon was my logo for my midwifery practice. And I just was really sad. Excuse me. So this is another thing of the insect world. This is dragonflies. So I just learned that when the dragonflies mate, and the female dragonfly has mated, and her eggs are fertilized, and the male flies away. But other male dragonflies don't realize this, and they're still very aggressive, and they're pursuing her, which actually could be harmful to her. So when the males are now being aggressive and trying to mate with her, she fakes her own death. She crashes out of the sky, crashes to the ground, lays there dead until the male flies away, and then she gets up and flies the other way. I just think it's fabulous. I mean, I know I've heard about women who fake that they're sleeping, but this is great to fake your own death. It's astounding to me. I think the insect world is so complex. So things are getting pretty microscopic now on the rock. It's getting cold, and now we're just looking at the covering of the rock. And here we are. Oh, this is the thing I found out, that snowflakes are alive. That actually, in the middle of each snowflake is a little a DNA. It's a bacterium called Pseudomonas syringae with ice nucleating proteins, and these are rod-shaped gram-negative bacterium with a polar flagella, and they are actually area in the middle. And so this is how this plant pathogen got across the ocean, is because it's in snowflakes. Just had no idea. So this is the rough grouse tracks that I saw there. It's a very obvious, they're single file, the three-toed tracks, quite distinctive. And then this is a picture of ice that on my pond that I just thought was really psychedelic. And now it's getting really quiet. I kept saying, where are the birds? What's going on? There weren't even any birds. It was just silence out there. Oh, this is some geology. This is an aerial view of my mandala, which is in that red circle. So I did go out and I found the otter slide on the far side of the beaver dam. And that was pretty cool. The otters I found can have been clocked up to 17 miles per hour while they're sliding in the snow. So I did this drawing of a river otter, and I just think it's hilarious. I think it looks like he's just saying, "Hey, baby." I don't even know I just love this drawing. Pileated woodpecker. So now we're getting really microscopic. We're down to the lichen on my rock. So this is January 22nd. It's 0 degrees, and I was out there and feeling pretty sorry for myself, I have to say. It was quiet and lonely, and I said, this is the lone Homo sapiens female sitting on a rock. All of nature is hibernating. If you listen carefully, the silence is beautiful. And so I finally just all of a sudden got it, that's the whole point about winter. That's the whole point, is that it's quiet and it's hibernating and it's all suspended animation. It's waiting. And I guess we all are waiting when we're out there in the middle of the winter. So this is parts on lichen. This is a whole other thing. I really got into lichens from this course. I just never understood. I didn't realize that lichens had so much medicinal properties and were such strong healers. That's kind of where I'm going now with is to examine about lichens and their medicinal properties. This is actually blue flag iris pods, which were, the leftovers from the summer, but I just thought they were strikingly beautiful. So this is, I said this is the stillness behind motion. When time itself stops, the center is also the circumference of all. It's just winter. It's bitter cold. It's this one I said is too cold, and I couldn't take it. I said, I'm abandoning ship. It was like -20. And there's my rock. It's midwinter in the time of the year's death, and the field lies fallow. Now all is gestating, waiting, but everything passes and changes under the snow. Every ending is a new beginning. Seed becomes fruit, fruit becomes seed. Now sleep the sleep of a newborn. Oh yeah, and this is rabbits. This is tracking rabbits. This is at the end of February. And these coyotes walked right in front of me, a mated pair. Just gonna whip through this a little bit. So down below is a tree lungwort, Liberia pulmonaria, and this is lichen that I know you know it. It grows on the trees. It looks sort of like staghorn fern, but this is the one that's supposed to be completely, really antiviral and used for treating respiratory issues. So I've been harvesting and making tincture out of Liberia pulmonaria. And then this is starting to be spring. The wild turkeys, these are tracks, and this is my stream, and this is their super highway where they've been walking. And this is the guy that I sort of blame for our bird deaths here. But nature's neither kind nor cruel. It just is. Okay, so this is getting to the end. I was sitting on my rock in the snow, and I heard a buzzing, and a fly landed in the snow right next to me, and I couldn't believe it. There was like the first live thing all winter. I was so excited to see this fly. I fly, and so then I went in and I researched this. I drew it and I researched it, and this is a robber fly. It's one of the first that come out of the soil in the spring. It's a predator and attacks its prey by stabbing it with its short, strong proboscis, injecting the victim with saliva containing neurotoxins and proteolytic enzymes, which very rapidly paralyzes the victim and soon digests the insides. The robber fly then sucks the liquefied material through its proboscis. So then I was thinking, well, I maybe won't be kissing this fly, but anyway, I was so ecstatic to see another living being on my rock. So this is March 11th. This is the night that I presented my nature journal to my class, my Maine Master Naturalist class. This, oh shit. I wrote that, so the Canadian geese are now coming back, and I in the clear blue air. It sounds like, oh, wait, excuse me one second. Sorry. Sorry. So the Canadian geese are coming back now. This is March 11th. And I wrote, meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. It's Mary Oliver. So the ironic thing here is that March 11th, when I gave this presentation for my capstone project for my Maine Master Naturalist program, it was also the same night that the director of the World Health Organization proclaimed COVID-19 as a global pandemic, and I never saw my classmates again. Everything crashed that night, last night. And so this is the end of my presentation, except there's one last slide. I forgot March 19th was the vernal equinox, and in the middle of the pandemic, I woke up and this was the sunrise over my mandala on the morning of March 19th. And I said, all elements within us must be brought into a new harmony. And that's the end. And then I have some instructions for people who want to start nature journaling. Basically, it's to start now. But can you open up now?
Yep.
Oh my God. Hi.
Hi, we have two participants here.
Two.
Two attendees plus me. I thought it was wonderful.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry that more people did not participate, but hopefully they will see the recorded webinar. So do either or both of our attendees have any questions? If you do, you can put it in the question and answer box, or you can raise your hand and I'll let you ask it. I'll ask you a question. Are you planning on publishing this as a book?
I might. Yeah, I might. That's sort of what. So when I did when I scanned these slides was for my whoops. Oh shoot. What did I do? Ah. Oh no. Hold on. Okay. So when I was doing this for my capstone project, I had no idea. Well, nobody knew that then the pandemic would happen, and this would be the way that we would be communicating was through Zoom. I didn't even know what Zoom was, but this is actually, it's really a good Zoom is a good venue for this, and it's been fun. It's been great. But I probably will publish this after all this is over.
Right. We have a question. Alana says, wonderful presentation. Thank you. I've heard something about the quaking aspens being able to photosynthesize on both sides of the leaves. Have you heard of this?
I did not. I didn't even know that. I did not know that. Huh, that's cool.
Okay. Catherine says, I also enjoyed the presentation very much and learned a lot. The illustrations are delightful. Thank you.
Thank you. That's one thing I want to say about nature journaling is that you don't have to be a good artist. You don't have to be. The process of drawing is actually what brings you more, it makes you more aware of the being that you're drawing. So you don't have to be a great artist. It's more the process of understanding and sort of getting so entrenched in what you are drawing that makes it happen.
Well, you
makes
are a
it
great
wonderful.
artist, though.
Oh, thanks.
I love looking at things like that, people drawing and writing
Thanks.
about what they're seeing, and I think it would be a great book. So
Well, so the one thing about journaling, nature journaling, which I want to encourage people, is to pick a place, somewhere where it's easy to get to, but that you will probably go to once a week. So I went once a week. I went, every Monday afternoon and just sat there for maybe 45 minutes or an hour, not even 45 minutes, but just observing and feeling and smelling and seeing and tasting, and then coming back and researching. But the thing is to make it to be a ritual that you do. And so, and I think to start now, because now is spring and now is a great time to go out and sit and be. And then you can see how every week something new has happened, something new is transpiring. And I think would be a great time to start doing that.
Okay, Alana asks, how did you handle sitting there with the mosquitoes and flies?
I complained a lot. So I don't know if you know about the Crazy Creek chair. The Crazy Creek chair is a chair that opens up it's a fabric chair and it opens up like that. Crazy Creek chair?
No.
Anyway, I would sit there in the Crazy Creek chair, which made it really comfortable. And as a matter of fact, even in the winter when it was like really, really cold, I fell asleep a bunch sitting in the Crazy Creek chair in the snow. But I don't know, if you sit there for 45 minutes, the black flies fly up your nostrils and they get, but you can do it. You can tough it out for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
There's an end to it. But,
true.
And then one thing I think more than anything that I was paranoid about is ticks. That's the.
Oh yeah.
But sitting on a rock, I wasn't really exposed to ticks, doing their questing and as much.
Very cool. Well, I have couple of, do you know Kristen Grant?
Mm-mm.
Well, she became a master naturalist a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And then I have another good friend that's in the program right now in Waterville.
Oh, I knew that was going to be in one. Yeah. It's an amazing program. I mean, I have a degree in natural history, but that degree is 50 years old, believe it or not. I mean, and so 50 years ago when we were nature journaling, they told us to be really scientific and you had to be really objective. You couldn't be subjective. And so now 50 years later, when you journal, they want you to write what your 5 senses and then what's in your heart. And that just makes so much difference. It makes all the difference in the world because it places you in the middle of the community. I mean, you're part of the web and you're part of all the other beings that are there. And I think it really made a huge difference in my observations and sitting there.
Yeah.
It's a great course. The Maine Master Naturalist course is really
very
good.
rigorous course, right?
Oh my God. I mean, it's nuts, basically, the amount of work. It's a lot of work, but it's fun and it's really good. That people are so knowledgeable and so, highly recommend it. Definitely.
Great. Okay, well, I don't know. It doesn't look like there's any other questions.
Okay, well, thank you guys.
I want to thank you again for doing this. It was great.
Thanks.
And we will get it up on our YouTube channel and Facebook, and more people will look at it, and hope to see you again sometime.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye, you guys. Bye.